Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in. So for people who are familiar to my channel know that I'm a big fan of handhelds, especially the cheap ones. But I'm always trying to hunt for stuff that you don't see very often or is just fun to show on the channel. But in this video I just want to focus on top 10 handhelds, or better said 10 handhelds you maybe don't see anymore on Ali-Express. And we already have forgotten about with this freaking invasion. So stay tuned and let's go. So for the number 10 position I choose this Sony Ericsson phone. Yeah, basically this is an Android phone with some prehistoric Android software on it. But you still have the possibility to emulate or play some games. You can add yourself some emulators, or better said sideload them if you want to. In combination with some support for PlayStation 1 games. There are some programs out that can even convert your ISO files to slap it on this machine. And in my opinion, this is quite interesting. I don't know if you can pick them up for very cheap or they're still freaking expensive AliExpress, but I picked it up. It was more like a refurbished version, and I think it's it's just interesting. It's not really, let's say, a convenient thing because we're having so many different handhelds. They're way better than this, but it was quite cool to see like this thing coming up on AliExpress. And I just picked it up, I think it was a couple of years ago already, and I just wanted to show you here on the channel. It's interesting if you're like big collector of handhelds, but what I already told you, there are so many handhelds that can basically do the same thing. But like I mentioned, I love to show a lot of the weird handhelds. Maybe they're not really a great thing to pick up, but it's just fun. You can do a lot of great things with it. Sadly, the store was not online, so you couldn't download from, let's say, the Xperia Play Store. That was a little bit of a bummer, but that you're going to get with these old pieces of hardware. But you can still have the option to play some 16-bit stuff and a lot of things that you can play, of course, with your normal Retro Game 350. It was a big fun making this review back in today and having this thing in the collection. So therefore I wanted to put this system in the list on the number 10 position because it's very unique and maybe you can still pick it up from AliExpress or maybe not in the future. That is what you're going to get with these refurbished products. It's fun, it's cool to see that it works very well with PlayStation 1. So let's go on with the next one. So for the number 9 we have another special one. It's the WikiPad with the NVIDIA Tegra chipset. It's a very old piece of hardware and it's comparing with the new, let's say, Retro Game 350 or other devices. It makes completely no sense having this thing. Yeah, it's a touchpad, but it is really old. It was not quite slow. It felt also like a very quality product, but it is more like fun to have and to show here on the channel. I picked it up back in the day for not a lot of money on eBay. There was a guy who was selling these brand new in box, more like, I think he like bought a lot and was just basically pushing them away on eBay. Now, if you can pick it up in very good condition for maybe, let's say, $20, it's a fun product to have and to mess around with it. The Android software was very old on this machine, so you could reach the Play Store for a certain time, but let's put it this way, if you have like an old Android, I wouldn't say recommend doing that. And overall, so what you see is what you're going to get. I did like the controls, a little bit bulky, but it's pretty cool. You can also like emulate stuff because it's an Android and you can basically load up your emulators. So in overall, the WikiPad, I think it just deserves a spot on my number 9. It's not perfect, it's flawed in many ways, but I think it's just a really fun product to show off. So we'll check out the full review if you're interested in this. So let's go on with the number 8. Okay, so these are the devices that I always get really excited about. And the reason why, because they are like putting like videos on YouTube, like this is the PS Vita clone. But in the end, what it was more basically like a MoQ version. Simply what a MoQ is a telephone, 2 SIM cards, with some Android on it, and you can do some awesome things. Because it was running on Android 7, the specifications, it was not a great, especially when you're comparing with the later generation or newer generation handhelds. So when you're comparing this with an X6 or an X9, yeah, the price of this version was like 3 times the price of a cheap handheld, but the quality was a completely different level. We're having buttons, we're having Android software, still a very old one. That's more like the common problem with these freaking things from AliExpress. But it had a lot of capabilities when it comes for emulating some games, and it looks amazing on this beautiful IPS display that was inside this machine. The joysticks, I am not a big fan of those slider joysticks, but it's more like a personal thing. It could even, let's say, emulate up to PlayStation 1, but I must say that nowadays I'm a little bit spoiled when it comes to these handhelds, because PlayStation 1 is no problem with a lot of handhelds that cost almost a fraction of this device. So that is why I love to have the handhelds like these, just fun to show, but then overall they are not really, let's say, a great product to buy when it comes to the value and the money you're paying for it. Because again, you can buy cheap handheld nowadays that can also play PlayStation 1. So for the number 8, I choose this product, and simply because I like the quality of it. It's a shame with older firmware, and so far I know there are no updates whatsoever. It's always a little bit problem with these things from Ali-Express. You pick them up, you play some games, and there is no way of upgrading the firmware so far I know. So let's go on with the show and let's check out another one, number 7. For the number 7, I choose the Clockworks DIY handheld. I have no idea what happened to them, because I don't see them very often. Of course, I'm shopping a lot on AliExpress, so I did see them. They were selling this for a lot of money. Maybe this will be more like become a collectible in the end. It was running on Linux, and it was a quite interesting project. You can put like a sort, let's say literally a Lego. You can say like a Lego, you put it together. It's not like soldering needed. It was plug and play, pretty cool. You can do a lot of great things with it. You can play some retro games up to PlayStation 1 again. And back in the day, we only having like these shitty handhelds that couldn't even play, let's say, SNES normally. So this was like a big step up. These things were not very cheap, of course, but I really appreciated when products like this come out, and that's the reason I picked it up and I wanted to review it back in the day on the channel. The design itself was looking similar, of course, like the Game Boy in like the form factor, not like a 1-1 copy, but it has some interesting specs like a quad-core, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth capabilities, and I think like they wanted to have this handheld on the market. I want to focus on, let's say, more like the people want to. I love tinkering and just like to mess around with it, because that was what it was. It was not like a plug and play device that you can play some games instantly. There were some stuff pre-installed, like some homebrew games, like some freeware. But then overall, if you want to like mess around and play some games, you need to do a lot of tinkering. And it was a lot of fun, a beautiful IPS display, and it had a lot of capabilities. But sadly, with the invasion of the handhelds, this is a handheld where basically you don't see very often anymore. And if you want to pick it up, maybe it's super expensive. And in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense picking it up. I do like this project. Check out the full review. I did it a long time ago on the channel. But let's go on to number 6. And for the number 7, I choose the Clockwork because this thing is pretty unique. The modular portable game console, I love to call it. Okay, so for the number 6, I choose the Big Ben. So I know this brand for a lot of peripherals that they were selling on, like say, MediaMarkt or some other companies over here. But the Big Ben, it's more like the WikiPad. I can still remember that I just saw it in the local store here, the MediaMarkt, and they were selling this thing, and it looks quite interesting. It was not cheap. By the way, I didn't pick it up brand new. I found it like on the second-hand marketplace, and I was really interested to see what it is. And again, I love reviewing handhelds, so I was more like, this is a hidden gem for my personal channel. I want to see what it is, show it off, and make a video for you guys. And I did. It's a really old prehistoric Android. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Every time I find something with Android, it's freaking old. But I was more like, it doesn't go. Oh man, this was not in good condition. I can tell you that. Like the screen was all scratched up. I didn't have a screen protector. Oh boy, that was really bad. But in overall, it was a pretty cool device. And yeah, it had a lot of potential if you ask me. So what I can remember is that this device has like a smaller display. Prehistoric Android, but you still had the option to load up games or load up some emulators if you want to. Up to PlayStation 1 was possible, but PlayStation 1 had some issues when it comes to certain games. But yeah, a lot of stuff didn't work at all. So that was a little bit of a bummer. So if you need to like add some games, it's also going to be like a pain in the butt. Okay, so this is called like the Game Tab one. I don't know if Big Ben ever made like a second one. I think that was the only one they released back in the day. It had like not really interesting specifications if you ask me. But it still had a lot of possibilities when it comes to emulation of PlayStation 1 and 64. And again, due of the power, it's very limited, but it was a lot of fun making this video back in the day and showing this off on the channel. I really like the controls of it, especially when you're playing some PlayStation 1 games like Descent that has like the support for 2 joysticks. It was a lot of fun. It was quite challenging to play, but overall, this is the reason why I wanted to put it in my number 6 position. The Big Ben. It's a product you will not see very often. I think especially in the US market. I think it was focused even like on Europe market, but nevertheless, let me know in the comments if you ever seen this in the US or on other market. I want to thank you. Let's go on. Let's whatever. Don't know what I'm saying. Brain fart moment, like with my second channel, and let's go with the show. Number 5. Alright, so for the number 5 I have chosen the Polaroid Android device. Yeah, it's again on Android. And the reason why is because these things are not very easy to find. I came across on this Ali-Express a couple of years ago. I picked it up and I think instantly it was sold out. And I know if they're like selling old stuff that I picked up from Taobao or whatever, but nevertheless I think it's always quite interesting. When you're looking at the emulation, it doesn't make any sense if you ask me. And the reason why it doesn't make any sense, because these things had no special things to offer, like AV out, horrible battery, and they look fancy. That's the only thing I can think of, like old Android versions, and it's just a freaking nightmare. The touch itself, it's not super bad, but yeah, going on the internet with this is just an out of the question story. I could able to get on the Play Store, but I recommend not even using it with Android. I think it was 4.4, something like that. Here we're having the app that has the option to basically add your games to. I think they were running really old emulators because even the GBA stuff wasn't running perfectly. But the cool thing is that we have the option to play Fruit Ninja. And you can see that the system itself is quite responsive. And it was really fun to play Fruit Ninja again. I think we needed to have this more. So like nowadays we have a lot of Android based devices with no touchscreen. And it's such a bummer because we don't have the option to play Fruit Ninja, man. That is just outrageous. But okay, so when you're having this device itself, it's a fun product to have in your collection, but it doesn't make any sense having and playing some games, because a lot of these devices nowadays can play all the games without any hassle. They are more like a fraction of the cost of this thing. I think if you can pick it up maybe second hand, you need to pay around 50 up to 100 euros. So that is not a really good thing to do. You can just break up an RG3 on 50 and having the same performance and having even the option to play PlayStation 1. And 64 doesn't really run perfectly. A lot of the devices just take that in consideration, but the old stuff runs fine. Of course, an RG350 doesn't have a Fruit Ninja in combination with a touchscreen. But the reason I put this on the number 5, because I always find very interesting to see tablets / game consoles that can play old school games. On the number 4, let's choose the Vanzetic. It's a 7-inch, yep, again, Android tablet. I know, man, I have something with these devices. But this is just a great example. It was even more rarer than the Polaroid version. I found it, and after clicking on it, it was out of stock again. And that's what you're going to find. And the reason why, because these are just really old, and this thing was quite horrible when it comes to the performance and also like the battery life and everything that comes with it. It was a really old piece of product, piece of hardware, and it did have a lot of potential, because yeah, with the touchscreen and we having some game controls on them, I must say it was not super comfortable. But yeah, that's what you're going to get with these tablets with buttons. So it had the option to run a lot of stuff from 8-bit, Game Boy Classic, you name it. But in overall the performance was pretty bad, and I did notice that after having this thing for a couple of weeks, it started to slow down and it was basically unusable with a lot of games. Even booting up, it took forever. I tried to watch some YouTube, it doesn't even work. So with the Vanzetic 7-inch, it's a pretty cool device to see, but it was pretty pointless, and especially now in 2021. So for the next one, number 3 position, I chose the PMP. It's a quite interesting one. They call it like the 32-bit. And so far I know, maybe you can pick it up for a couple of stores, but on overall, these things are freaking hard to find. And I did a review like years ago. It was a handheld that didn't make any sense in my opinion. Like, this thing is weird, it has a flashlight, yeah, seriously. And it has some options to play some old school stuff, but mostly like NES, Super NES, Mega Drive, like the really old stuff that we can play on our freaking potato phone. But I love to review both of these things. Like, it was a great example of the first generation of Chinese handhelds, because these things had these horrible menu, like still the 10,000 to 1. But like repeat, like say after I think 30 games or 20 games, like not a lot of games on it. And adding games was a freaking nightmare, or you couldn't even do this. So in overall, this device is just a freaking joke, especially now in 2021. So the display itself was that horrible LCD display. The emulation was horrible, and I couldn't say any good about it. It's fun to see these devices like the pieces of hardware, but when it comes to the performance and emulation, it was just so freaking awful. Okay, so for number 2, I just want to show off this GXD 7-inch big bad boy. So I picked it up. This thing was way too expensive when I bought it. I still, they were like asking like 200 up to 250 freaking euros for this thing. And the reason I just picked it up is for making a review for you guys. I want to check it out back today, and I find it very fascinating. It's a little bit of a bummer they are asking like a lot of money for these devices, because they are not worth it. But this was more like a quality product. It weighs a ton, it feels nice, good controls, nice joysticks. So I was very pleased to have this and to review it on the channel. So the analog stick is something you hate it or you like it. The D-pad felt very good, and also when you want to play some retro games or fighting games, I think it was a pretty good D-pad. Got some decent audio, not the best, especially for the price. And of course all the function keys for navigating through the menu, going back and etc. So it runs on Android. It was on a very old Android again, like these things are always running on Android 4 or 6, some are having 7. But it was not recommended to use this thing on the Play Store again. You could play some games, so it's still, when I basically opened it up and downloaded the new Play Store, so it was quite interesting to see. So in the main review, I just compared it with a couple of different handhelds like the X16 or let's say an RG350. Man oh man, this GXD is a beast of a handheld. And it's just a shame that it is a little bit underpowered combined with the older Android. Compare this with the Powkiddy 3. Yeah, so you can see that this thing is quite huge and it's still very comfortable to play. Why I'm a big fan of the Android devices. Some hate it due of input lag of the emulation, but it's something I personally not really notice. But in overall, when you're looking at this device, you can still play some Zen pinball and works very well when using the shoulder buttons. It was a lot of fun playing my favorite pinball machine on Android gaming tablet. So that is what I love to see in the future with these devices, that we're going to get an Android device, but also in combination that we can play some Android games and maybe with touch. That would be cool. Or you can get yourself a mobile phone, of course. It's all up to you, but I like handhelds in combination with Android. And therefore, I choose number 2 for the GXD. Okay, so we're still having Android devices. Yeah, these things are just pretty rare, and the T-Lex I didn't like, or you like to call it, but the reason why, because I picked 2 of them up and both have issues, and I think more like this is very old stock, because they were selling this even, I think it's before or with the time with the X6. And for the people who not know what the X6 is, the X6 is like the first generation of these cheap knockoff PlayStation Vita, PlayStation Portable handhelds, and they were awful. But this thing was quite interesting because it had a touchscreen, it has a very nice display, and of course with Android we have the possibility to play N64 that you couldn't even do that with all the other devices. The performance was just really horrible, but it was a really fascinating piece of hardware to see what you could do with it. In the end, I did a review. I was really frustrated because I needed to buy 2 of these bloody things and basically make from 2 one system. Yeah, seriously, I ripped them apart. It was just a freaking nightmare. So if you're going to dive deep into Ali-Express, maybe you can still pick one up. I would not recommend it because it's just freaking awful. And me not recommending stuff, you know, I don't usually do this because this was just an awful experience. The D-pad was not really deep with like the 4 buttons. It was just one flimsy piece of crap. The reason I just wanted to put it on number 1 because I find it a really fascinating piece of hardware, because this thing was prehistoric compared with all the other devices that I've shown you. And yeah, the T-Lex you like, I don't know if somebody even bought it back in the day before I made a review about it. And yeah, it's a piece of hardware that I think a lot of people already forgot about, especially with this invasion of devices that are way better than this piece of crap. But I did find it really fascinating to see that it has a lot of pre-installed emulators. Don't know what kind of versions, you couldn't see, like really old versions now. But PlayStation Portable emulator? man, it's not going to run in a million years on this device. So in overall, when you're looking at this device and the performance, it was not bad. It could even run PlayStation 1 pretty good. And when you're comparing this with all the other devices sold, like almost for the same price, you could say that it was not bad at all, man. It was quite interesting if they made this thing like a better quality, and yeah, it had not like the issues that it have today. It would be such a great system to buy, even up to today. But nope, they messed it up with this. It was a really horrible piece of crap, and yeah, it had a lot of issues. It was just feeling very flimsy, the way they did a lot of these devices back in the day. The reason why I put this one on the number one, because this is a handheld I personally want to forget. Seriously, I just want to forget this thing that it ever existed, because I had like the most horrible experience, even if some of the emulation was not that bad in my opinion. But it was more like the hardware was so bad of a quality that you just need to avoid this thing of all cost. And I must say that you could play Fruit Ninja. That makes it a little bit better. But this is the reason I want to see more like a Wedoit Pocket 3 in the future that has like a touchscreen, a nice display IPS, and you can play some Android games with it. That would be so cool. But okay guys, this was my top 10 for 2021. The handheld that we maybe have forgotten about, or better said, you have never seen it because they are not even for sale anymore on Ali-Express. The invasion of handhelds will continue in this year. More videos will come out. Consider subscribing, hit the bell, become one of the Wicked family. And I will see you in the next video.